What's up, everyone? Happy Football Friday. Coming to you live from New York City. So, another location checked off in the just rusty around the world, shows. But, anyways, we got a lot to talk about today. We have seniors committee Hall of Fame semifinalists list out. We got some USFL re-signings, some college football news, and of course, we'll go through the Big Ten today, and I'll let you know how I see that conference playing out. One of the major players in the national championship race yearly. So let's get started with USFL news. So I mentioned a couple big re-signings for two of the best teams in the USFL. The Generals, they re-signed running back Darius Victor and offensive tackle Calvin Ashley. Ashley, a back-to-back two-time All USFL player. Darius Victor, of course, thick thighs save lives. The bowling ball himself will be back for USFL week season 3 next year. I'm intrigued to watch the Generals play again, see if they can recapture the momentum they had in season 1 when they made the playoffs there in the East Division Championship, or the North Division Championship, I should say. The back-to-back two-time champions Birmingham Stallions, they have re-signed running back CJ Marable, catalyst of their run game, along with quarterback Alex Magoo, who's expected to get an NFL deal here shortly. Marable will be back in the fold for Birmingham. Again, their leading rusher at the running back position, so good to have him back in the fold with Birmingham for next year. College football news, the SEC, they have extended Commissioner Sankey through 2028. So Sankey has done a lot of stuff for the SEC, including next season bringing Oklahoma and Texas, two of the biggest market teams and most storied programs in college football, to the SEC. And that should be intriguing next year when they go divisionless, I believe, is what the SEC is going to do next season, just like the Big Ten. Northwestern talked about Pat Fitzgerald on 2 shows in a row, last Friday and on Wednesday there, or Tuesday. They finally have their new head coach, Northwestern promoting defensive coordinator David Braun to the interim head coach position. So he will serve as the HC for the entire 2023 season there. NFL news, the Browns defensive tackle Malik Jackson, he has retired. Did not play last season, but a pretty solid career as a former 5th-round pick in 2012, number 137 overall by the Denver Broncos. He played for the Broncos from 2012 to 15, played with the Jags from 16 to 18, the Eagles in 19 and 20, and the Browns in 2021. One-time Super Bowl champ, he won Super Bowl 50 with Denver, and one-time Pro Bowler as well. 142 career regular season games, 89 of those starts, 292 tackles, 206 of those solos, 63 tackles for loss, 35 and a half career sacks in the regular season, 106 QB hits, 29 pass deflections, 6 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and 1 safety. Did play 11 games in the playoffs, started 10 of those, 3 seasons with the Broncos and 1 with the Jags, where his playoffs came. 29 total tackles, 22 solos, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 10 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 1 fumble recovery for a touchdown. So pretty solid career for Malik Jackson. Was happy to have him on the Eagles for a couple seasons there, and happy retirement, Malik. NFL Films. We finally have the Hard Knocks team. It will be, of course, the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, Allen Lazard, and everyone else. Robert Saleh and co. will host NFL Films as the Hard Knocks team for the 2023 training camp. As I mentioned earlier, the Hall of Fame Seniors Committee has narrowed its class to 60 semifinalists, 31 of those players, 29 in the coach contributor category. So the 31 players are, and these teams are the teams that they either played on their entire career or the team that they played the most seasons with. So Bengals quarterback Ken Anderson, Giants running back Otis Anderson, Giants linebacker Carl Banks, Eagles running back Maxie Baughan, Redskins running back Larry Brown, Dolphins wide receiver Mark Clayton, Giants quarterback Charlie Connerly, 49ers running back Roger Craig, Rams wide receiver Henry Ellard, Broncos linebacker Randy Gradishar, Raiders corner Lester Hayes, Colts offensive tackle Chris Hinton, Packers running back Cecil Isbell, Redskins offensive tackle Joe Jacoby, Oilers wide receiver Billy White Shoes Johnson, Falcons offensive tackle Mike Ken, Dolphins guard Bob Kuchenberg, Falcons offensive tackle George Coons, Chiefs corner Albert Lewis, Vikings defensive end Jim Marshall, Browns linebacker Clay Matthews Jr., Bears defensive tackle Steve McMichael, Rams defensive back Eddie Meter, Patriots wide receiver Stanley Morgan, Falcons linebacker Tommy Nobis, Raiders wide receiver Art Powell, Packers wide receiver Sterling Sharp, Bills special teamer Steve Tasker, Chiefs wide receiver Otis Taylor, Cowboys corner Everson Walls, and Eagles offensive tackle Al Wistert. The 29 coaches and contributors: Oilers / Titans owner Bud Adams, network CBS, predominantly CBS network executive Rune Arledge, the founder of Monday Night Football there, Titans scout C.O. Brocato, Giants head coach Tom Coughlin, Broncos assistant head coach / offensive line coach Alex Gibbs, Canton Bulldogs owner Ralph Hay, Seahawks head coach Mike Holmgren, Patriots GM Bucko Kilroy, Rams scout Eddie Kotal, Patriots owner Robert Kraft, Commissioner Elmer Layden, official Jerry Markbright, Bears owner Virginia McCaskey, Buccaneers GM Rich McKay, 49ers GM John McVay, Browns / Ravens owner Art Modell, Steelers head coach Buddy Parker, Chiefs GM Carl Peterson, Broncos head coach Dan Reeves, Steelers VP of Player Personnel Art Rooney Jr., Chiefs head coach Marty Schottenheimer, official Jerry Seaman, 49ers head coach George Seifert, Broncos head coach Mike Shanahan, Bears defensive coordinator Clark Shaughnessy, Elias executive Seymour Seawoff, official Jim Tooney, Chief scout Lloyd Wells, and Cowboys executive John Wooten. 60 total. And the next step in the process, they will trim that 60 player and coach contributor list to 12 finalists that they will then vote on to see which guys get into which guys and lady, Virginia's in there, get into the Hall of Fame class of 2024. So, yeah. We do have another suspension popped up. A free agent offensive tackle Will Richardson. He was the Jags 2018 fourth-round pick. He has been suspended for the first 3 weeks of the season, I believe, for a PED violation. And let's talk about money. The Jets, they signed defensive tackle Quinnen Williams to a 4-year, $96 million deal, $66 million guaranteed. Getting that paper is Quinnen Williams. His brother got paid earlier, Jets linebacker Quincy Williams to a 3-year, $18 million extension. So Quinnen finally gets his money now, up there with the likes of Aaron Donald and the rest of the high-paid defensive tackle groups. And I don't see anything else on the Twitter feed, so let's finish up the show here with the Big Ten preview. I say finish up the show. This will be the most of the show. So here's how I see the Big Ten playing out. Last season with the East-West division format, before they switched to the new model with UCLA and USC coming in next year. So we're going to start off, again, how the Big Ten finished overall record-wise. So let's start out with the defending Big Ten champions, back-to-back Big Ten champs, Michigan Wolverines here. So their key returning players, quarterback J.J. McCarthy, second team All-Big Ten. Running back Blake Corum was the running back of the year and a first-teamer. Offensive lineman Zach Zinter was a first team. Offensive lineman Trevor Keegan, second team. Offensive lineman Carson Barnhart, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Jalen Harrell and Chris Jenkins, both honorable mention. Linebacker Junior Colson was a third team. Linebacker Michael Barrett, honorable mention. And then defensive backs Jermon Green, Makari Page, Mike Sanderstill, and Rod Moore were all honorable mention players. They lost a lot to the NFL transfer portal, just like good teams usually do. So quarterback Cade McNamara and Alan Bowman both transferred. Wide receiver Ronnie Bell to the NFL, third team all-conference. Wide receiver Andrell Anthony transferred. Wide receiver AJ Henning transferred. He was a second team as a return specialist. Tight end Luke Schoonmaker to the NFL, honorable mention. Tight end Eric All transferred. Offensive tackle Ryan Hayes to the NFL, third team. Center Olu Oluwatimi to the NFL, second team. Defensive lineman Mozzie Smith to the NFL, first team. Defensive lineman Mike Morris to the NFL. He was the defensive lineman of the year and a first teamer. Defensive lineman Julius Welshoff transferred. Defensive back TJ Turner went to the NFL, third team. Defensive back Nikai Hill-Green transferred, as did defensive back RJ Moten. And kicker Jake Moody to the NFL, kicker of the year last season, and a first-team all-conference player. Two key transfers to talk about. Quarterback Jack Tuttle coming from Indiana and defensive lineman Josiah Stewart from Coastal Carolina. Tuttle going to back up McCarthy this year and help in that regard. Josiah Stewart, I think that's going to be a key. He's going to be a key cog on their defensive line with Jalen Harrell and Chris Jenkins. I read the Big East or the Big Ten East divisional preview on ESPN today, and they mentioned the pass rush is one of the bigger issue spots or weak points on the Michigan team. So Josiah Stewart, great player at Coastal, going to help Big Blue rush the passer this year. I have Michigan going 11-1, 8-1 in conference play. So they win week 1 at home against ECU. They win at home against UNLV. They win at home against Bowling Green. They win at home against Rutgers. They win at Nebraska, win at Minnesota, win at home versus Indiana. They win at home against Purdue. They lose in Happy Valley at Penn State, and that will be critical when we talk about Penn State's schedule in a second. They win at Maryland, and they win at home against Ohio State, 3 in a row against the Buckeyes. I see that happening. I'll tell you why when we get to Ohio State in just a second. But, yeah, great season. Once again, the schedule sets up nicely. Obviously, it's Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State in the Big Ten East. So those are the three, and as you can see, those are 3 of my top 4 teams currently, how I have it finishing. So let's talk about those Buckeyes now. Their key returning, they have a ton coming back. Unfortunately, not at the most important position, but they do have a lot returning. So running back Mayan Williams, third teamer. Running back Travion Henderson was an honorable mention. Wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. was the wide receiver of the year and a first team all conference. Wide receiver Emeka Egbuka was a second team. Tight end Cade Stover was third team. Offensive lineman Donovan Jackson, first team. Offensive lineman Matthew Jones, second team. Defensive tackle Michael Hall Jr., third team. Defensive tackle Tyleek Williams, honorable mention. Defensive end JT Tuimoloau was a second team. Linebacker Tommy Eichenberg, first team. Linebacker Steele Chambers, honorable mention. Corner Denzel Burke, honorable mention. Safety Lathan Ransom, honorable mention. And punter Jesse Mirko was an honorable mention player as well. Here's what they lost, though. They bring back a lot, but they also lost a lot of production, even though less players overall. Quarterback C.J. Stroud to the NFL, Offensive Player of the Year, QB of the Year, and a first-team All-Conference. Offensive tackle Paris Johnson Jr. to the NFL, first team. Offensive tackle DeJuan Jones to the NFL, second team. Center Luke Whippler to the NFL, third team. Defensive lineman Zach Harrison to the NFL, first team. Linebacker Javante Jean-Baptiste transferred. Defensive back Ronnie Hickman to the NFL, third team. Safety Tanner McAllister to the NFL, honorable mention. Kicker Noah Ruggles to the NFL, third team. So, yeah, a lot of production lost, even though less players actually lost than returning. Couple key transfers. They got quarterback Tristan Gebbia from Oregon State. Wide receiver Lorenzo Styles comes over from Notre Dame. And the biggest one, I think, safety Jihad Carter comes over from Syracuse. So that's going to be a big boost after they lost Tanner McAllister and Ronnie Hickman to the NFL. I think Carter's going to play a big role back in the back end for the Buckeyes this year. I have the Buckeyes on a little bit of a down year this season. 9-3, 7-2. I'm not sure. I haven't seen Kyle McCord play enough to really know what he is. So, assuming he is a starter, I mean, I liked Gebbia at Oregon State. He lost the job to Chance Nolan, but yeah, we assume that it's going to be Kyle McCord. And again, it's just the inexperience. I'm not so sure. The big games is what I have him losing pretty much all three of the big games. There's four big games, I guess, really, but I have him going 1-3 in those. So week 1 at Indiana, they win. They win at home against Youngstown State. They win at home against Western Kentucky. They lose at Notre Dame. I like the Irish this year. Talk more about them next Friday. Week 5 bye, so pretty early there. They win at home against Maryland. They win at Purdue. They win at home against Penn State. But it's not going to be enough because they lose at Wisconsin, at Camp Randall. They win at Rutgers. They win at home against Michigan State. They win at home against Minnesota. And then they lose in the Big House at Michigan to get them to 9-3. The Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Michigan, all 3 away games, very difficult atmospheres to go into and win. And with an inexperienced quarterback, especially Notre Dame week 4, after they haven't really played anyone. Indiana, the only Power 5 team of the first 3 games, but they're not a very difficult team like Notre Dame will be. And to go into South Bend, that's a tough game to play with an inexperienced quarterback. Maybe they'll be better for the Wisconsin and the Michigan games. But definitely I think the loss at Notre Dame is the one that should stick, even if the other 2 don't. All right, moving on to the Nittany Lions here. Penn State, again, just like Michigan and Ohio State, they have quite a bit returning and quite a bit lost. Running backs, Nicholas Singleton, he was the freshman of the year and a third-teamer. Running back Katron Allen, honorable mention. Offensive tackle Olu Fashanu, third team. Offensive lineman Hunter Naurzad, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Sal Wormley, honorable mention. Defensive ends Adisa Isaac and Chop Robinson were both honorable mention. Linebacker Abdul Carter was a second team. Linebacker Curtis Jacobs was honorable mention. Corner Kalen King was third team. And corner Johnny Dixon was an honorable mention. Key losses, they did lose quite a bit, mostly to the NFL. Quarterback Sean Clifford went to the NFL, honorable mention. Quarterback Christian Veilleux transferred. Running backs Devin Ford and Kevon Lee both transferred. Wide receiver Parker Washington to the NFL, honorable mention. Tight end Brenton Strange to the NFL, third team. Offensive lineman Bryce Effner to the NFL, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Jimmy Chris transferred. Center Juice Scruggs to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive lineman PJ Mustipher to the NFL, third team. Corner Joey Porter Jr. to the NFL, first team. Safety Jair Brown to the NFL, third team. And kicker Jake Pinniger to the NFL, honorable mention player. And they got some pieces. So quarterback Drew Aller, I didn't really mention in the returners because he played sparingly, last year as Clifford was still the starter. But he's going to be the starter this year. Highly recruited 5-star player. But he got some weapons. James Franklin went out and got him some weapons in the transfer portal. Even though they really didn't need another running back, but they got one anyways. Running back Trey Potts comes over from Minnesota. Excellent player, especially in the third down receiving game. And then they got 2 wide receivers for him as well. Dante Cephas from Kent State, Malik McLean from Florida State gives them some size. And Cephas was excellent for the Golden Flashes of Kent State. So I'm excited to watch him pair up with the 2 running backs and some of the other weapons they still have there. Theo Johnson at tight end and Keandre Lambert-Smith at wide receiver. So your 2023 Big Ten Conference champions are the Penn State Nittany Lions. And they win they win at least the Big Ten East, right? We'll talk about the conference championship at the end more. But I do have them winning the Big Ten East because of their schedule. They win at home against West Virginia. They win at home against Delaware. They win at Illinois. They win at home against Iowa. They win at Northwestern. Week 6 bye. They win at home against UMass. They lose at Ohio State. They win at home against Indiana. They win at Maryland. They win at home against Michigan. They win at home against Rutgers. And they win at Michigan State on a Friday night, Black Friday. That Michigan game, that's the game. With Ohio State finishing 9-3, the tiebreaker is head-to-head, and I have Penn State beating Michigan because it's in Happy Valley. So that is why Penn State wins the Big Ten East, and I think the East has won the last 9 Big Ten championships, I believe. So it would probably mean that Penn State is your Big Ten champions. Heading over to the west side now, Minnesota finished with the best record. They did not win the Big Ten West, but that was Purdue. But they did finish with the best record out of all the Big Ten West teams. Their key returners, tight end Brevin Spann-Ford, he was an honorable mention. Offensive lineman Jackson Rushmeyer, third team. Offensive lineman Ariante Ursary and Quinn Carroll, both honorable mention. Defensive lineman Kyler Ball was an honorable mention. Linebacker Cody Lindenberg, honorable mention. Defensive back Tyler Newbin, second team. Key losses, a bunch. Minnesota, PJ Fleck, row in the boat there. Lost a bunch of production, especially quarterback Tanner Morgan to the NFL. Running back Mohamed Ibrahim went to the NFL first team. Running back Trey Potts transferred, like I mentioned. Wide receiver Mike Brown-Stevens transferred. Center John Michael Schmitz to the NFL first team. Offensive lineman Chuck Filiaga to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Trill Carter transferred. Linebacker Mariano Sori-Marin to the NFL, honorable mention. Linebacker Thomas Rush to the NFL, honorable mention. Corner Terrell Smith to the NFL, honorable mention. Corner Beanie Bishop transferred. Safety Jordan Howden went to the NFL, honorable mention. And kicker Matthew Trickett went to the NFL as well. Honorable mention player there. For the Golden Gophers here, a couple offensive weapons they got in the transfer portal. Running back Sean Tyler and wide receiver Corey Crooms, both coming over from Western Michigan. PJ's Flex old stomping grounds there in Kalamazoo. I absolutely love Sean Tyler. I think he's going to be a dynamic option in this ground and pound game that they like to do with Minnesota. It's just who is playing quarterback. I am not sure. I know they had the kid with the really long name. Ethan Kaliak-Manis, that is going to be their starter there, or he should be at least for the Golden Gophers. So inexperienced, to say the least. He got some playing time last year, but that's why I have a little bit of a downtick for Minnesota and having them going 6-6, 4-5 conference record, finishing there in 7th place, right in the middle of the conference. They win at home against Nebraska on a Thursday night, week 1. They win at home against Eastern Michigan. They lose at UNC. I believe the Tar Heels are a much better team than the Gophers are this year, especially with Drake May, Heisman hopeful there. They win at Northwestern. They win at home against Louisiana. They lose at home against Michigan, week 7 bye. So 4-2, not bad going into that. They lose at Iowa. Tough to play in Kinnick Stadium on the road there. Win at home against Michigan State. They lose at home against Illinois. That one's kind of an upset, I think. I do like Minnesota better than Illinois this year, but I just think Illinois might get them on that one. They win at Purdue. They lose at Ohio State, and they lose at home against Wisconsin. So that is how you get to 6-6 for Minnesota this year. Row the boat, PJ Fleck. Get yourself to another bowl game. Let's go to the Big Ten West champions now in the Purdue Boilermakers. So this is a team that I think is going to take a massive step back after their Big Ten West championship and Big Ten championship game appearance, where they got shellacked by Michigan, by the way. But the losses, I think, on this team are just too much to overcome. The returners, pretty solid, though. Running back Devin Mockabee, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Gus Hartwig and Marcus Embo are both honorable mention. And defensive back Cam Allen was an honorable mention as well. But the losses, like I said, stand out a lot. Quarterback Aiden O'Connell to the NFL, 3rd team. Running back King Dobru transferred. Wide receiver Charlie Jones to the NFL, 1st team. Wide receiver Milton Wright to the NFL. Tight end Payne Durham to the NFL, 2nd team. Offensive lineman Spencer Holsteig transferred, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Jack Sullivan transferred, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Lawrence Johnson transferred, honorable mention. Linebacker Jalen Graham went to the NFL. He was an honorable mention. And defensive back Corey Trice to the NFL, also an honorable mention player there. The couple transfers that they got, though, the big one, quarterback Hudson Card comes up from Texas. I would assume he's going to be the starting quarterback. I just don't know how much there is still going to be talent-wise around him to make this a really competitive team, especially with the new head coach now, Ryan Walters there coming in from Illinois, the former Illinois defensive coordinator. So we'll have to see how that the team looks and the culture-wise that Walters brings in there. But I don't believe in the first-year head coach in this situation. But the other two key transfers here, wide receiver Jamal Edrine comes up from FAU, and defensive lineman Jeffrey Emba comes over from Auburn. So I have the Boilermakers going 5-7, 4-5 in conference play, finishing 9th in total record there in terms of the Big Ten. They win at home against Fresno State week 1. No Jake Haener anymore, so not sure how Fresno is going to look. I'll see more when we do the Mountain West preview. They lose at Virginia Tech. I like Brent Pry's team. I know I had them finishing, I think, last or second to last in the ACC, but I do think they can win against Purdue at home there in Blacksburg. They lose at home against Syracuse. Like I said in an ACC preview, I really like Syracuse this year. They lose at home against Wisconsin on a Friday night. They win at home against Illinois. They lose at Iowa. They lose at home against Ohio State. Week 8 bye. They win at Nebraska. They lose at Michigan. They lose at home against Minnesota. They win at Northwestern, and they win at home against Indiana. Gets you to 5-7 on the season for the Boilermakers. No bowl bid in Coach Walter's first season there, but on the uptick if they can get some more transfers and develop some more guys. Heading to the Illini, Illinois. They surprisingly had a lot coming back this season. But I think the defensive losses were the big issue for me with this team here. Wide receiver Isaiah Williams returns, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Isaiah Adams, third team. Offensive lineman Julian Pearl, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Jerzon Newton, first team. I was surprised. I thought he went to the NFL, but he is listed on the roster. So I'm going to take their word for it. And he returns. That's a big piece for their D-line. Defensive lineman Keith Randolph Jr., third team. Outside linebacker Gabe Jacques and Seth Coleman, honorable mention. Linebacker Treek Barnes, honorable mention. And kicker Caleb Griffin, honorable mention as well. Losses, quarterback Tommy DeVito to the NFL, honorable mention. Running back Chase Brown to the NFL, second team. Offensive lineman Alex Palszewski to the NFL, second team. Offensive lineman Alex Pilstrom to the NFL, honorable mention. Linebacker Isaac Darkangelo to the NFL, honorable mention. And then here's where it is really tough for me to like this team this year. 4 defensive backs lost. Devin Witherspoon to the NFL, defensive back of the year and a first-teamer. Defensive back Sidney Brown to the NFL, second team. Defensive back Jartavius Martin to the NFL, second team. And defensive back Kendall Smith to the NFL, honorable mention. So losing that many players in the back end is going to make this really tough defensively this season for Illinois. They got 2 key transfers, quarterback Luke Altmaier from Ole Miss and safety Nicario Harper from Louisville. So Harper there will at least try to eliminate some of the hardships of losing all those DBs. But one guy, 1 does not equal 4. So it's going to be really tough for one guy to fill in for 4 different guys, especially the amount of production that they got out of Witherspoon, Brown, and Martin there, all getting drafted to the NFL. So with that being said, I have the Illini going 4-8, 2-7 conference record. They win at home against Toledo. They lose at Kansas on a Friday night. That's going to be a tough one. They lose at home against Penn State. They win at home against FAU. That might be a loss. I could see that being a loss. Tom Herman, Casey Thompson coming up there. Again, I like FAU this season. I can't remember where I had them finishing in the AAC, but I think it was 3rd or 4th there. They lose at Purdue week 5. They lose at home against Nebraska on a Friday night. They lose at Maryland, lose at home against Wisconsin. Week 9 bye. They lose at Minnesota. They win at home against Indiana. They lose at Iowa, and then they win at home against Northwestern to finish out 4-8 season. Tough year for the Illini. if they can get themselves a quarterback. Luke Altmaier is going to be the guy, I would have to think, but never really worked out in Ole Miss after Matt Corral, and then can't recall the quarterback that they have right now. Jackson Dart, that's right. Jackson Dart is the quarterback now, and Spencer Sanders. So, yeah, we'll see if Luke Altmaier is the guy and how he does this season for Illinois. Iowa, the Hawkeyes, I have them with a really solid season this year. 5th place for Kirk Ferentz's crew. Returning quarterback Spencer Petras, running back Caleb Johnson, honorable mention. Tight end Luke Lachey, honorable mention. Defensive end Joe Evans, 2nd team. Defensive lineman Logan Lee and Noah Shannon, honorable mention. Defensive back Cooper DeJean, 1st team. Kicker Drew Stevens, 2nd team. And punter Torrey Taylor, 1st team. Torrey Taylor, the face of this team. That's how they won some of the games last year, especially the South Dakota State game, where I wanted the Jackrabbits to win so badly. But by some miracle, the freaking the Hawkeyes won that with 2 friggin' safeties and a field goal or 2. But anyways, Torrey Taylor, pivotal in that one, pushing them back to the 1-yard line a couple times. Key losses here, quarterback Alex Padilla transferred, as did wide receivers Arlen Bruce IV and Keegan Johnson. Tight end Sam Laporta to the NFL. He was the tight end of the year and a 1st-teamer. Defensive lineman Lucas Van Ness to the NFL, 2nd team. Linebacker Jack Campbell to the NFL, defensive player of the year, linebacker of the year, and a 1st-teamer. Linebacker Seth Benson to the NFL, 2nd team. Defensive back Riley Moss to the NFL, 2nd team. And defensive back Kayvon Merriweather to the NFL, honorable mention player there. I really like what the couple transfers that Iowa got, though. Quarterback Caden McNamara comes over from Michigan. He's going to be the starter. I think that's a great option. They finally get a somewhat competent quarterback there for that offense that has just been atrocious the last couple of seasons. They get him a weapon. His guy, tight end Eric All, comes with him from Michigan. So I think that's going to be a boost. And All's going to just add to that lineage of great tight ends in Iowa history. And then linebacker Nick Jackson comes over from Virginia. Excellent coverage linebacker, 3-down player there. I think he's going to also add to the legacy of Iowa and having great linebackers there. So for the Hawkeyes, I see it going 9-3, 6-3 conference record, finishing 2nd place in the Big Ten West behind Wisconsin. They win at home against Utah State. They win at Iowa State. They win at home against Western Michigan. They lose at Penn State. They win at home against Michigan State. They win at home against Purdue. They lose at Wisconsin. They win at home against Minnesota. Week 9 bye. They win at Northwestern, win at home against Rutgers, win at home against Illinois. And a sneaky one, they lose at Nebraska in Lincoln. I don't know why. I just think that's kind of a trappy vibe game. And I think Matt Rule will have his squad ready by that time. And they upset the Hawkeyes in Lincoln, Nebraska there. Let's head on to the Terrapins, Maryland. Really solid season last year, 8-5 for Coach Loxley. Talia Tagovailoa returns. He was an honorable mention player at the quarterback spot there. Running back Roman Hemby, honorable mention. Tight end Corey Dykes, honorable mention. Linebacker Jashawn Barham, honorable mention. Defensive back Bo Braid, honorable mention. Punter Colton Spangler, honorable mention player. Losses, wide receiver Rakeem Jarrett, honorable mention. Tight end CJ Dupre, transferred. That's a big loss for them, but luckily they do have Dykes that plays the tight end spot as well. Offensive tackle Jalen Duncan to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Ami Finau to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive backs Deontay Banks and Jacorian Bennett to the NFL, honorable mention players. And kicker Chad Ryland to the NFL was also an honorable mention, all conference. 2 key transfers and 2 really solid ones. Wide receiver Caden Prather comes over from West Virginia, should help out with the loss of Rakeem Jarrett for Talia Tagovailoa, really young receiving core, but Prather should help in that regard. And then defensive back Jaquan Shepard from Cincinnati, ultra aggressive corner, as Cincinnati has a great track record of producing corners, and now he'll get his shot to hit the NFL as a Maryland Terrapin there. But definitely needed the help at DB with Banks and Bennett both going to the league. So I have another 8-win season for head coach Mike Locksley and the Terrapins. Talia Tagovailoa's last season, 8-4, 5-4 conference record there. They win at home against Towson, win at home against Charlotte. They win at home against Virginia on a Friday night. They win at Michigan State. They win at home against Indiana. So they're going into Ohio State 5-0, but they lose at Ohio State. I don't see them going into Columbus and winning that one. They win at home against Illinois. Week 8 bye. They win at Northwestern. They lose 3 out of the last 4, though. Tough games down the stretch. They lose at home against Penn State, lose at Nebraska, again going into Lincoln late in the season. I think Matt Rule will have his crew ready. They lose at home against Michigan, and they win at Rutgers to end the season 8-4. Solid bowl berth for Maryland, finishing 6th overall in my record predictions. Let's head to the Wisconsin Badgers. I know this is what my guy Logan really wanted to talk about. Unfortunately, had some stuff come up. He couldn't make the show today with the earlier start time. But let's talk about his Wisconsin Badgers. So, returning running back Braylon Allen, second team wide receiver Chimere DK, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Jack Nelson and Tanner Bordolini were honorable mention. Outside linebacker CJ Goetz, honorable mention. Inside linebacker Mema Njongmeta, third team. Inside linebacker Jordan Turner, honorable mention as well. Losses, quarterback Graham Mertz transferred. Running back Isaac Garendo transferred as well. He was an honorable mention return specialist. Offensive lineman Joe Tippmann to the NFL, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Logan Brown transferred. Defensive lineman Keanu Benton to the NFL, honorable mention. Linebacker Nick Herbig to the NFL, first team. And defensive back John Torchio to the NFL, first teamer as well. I think new head coach Luke Fickell did a great job in the transfer portal. They got some really solid players that are going to help them right away. And the biggest reason I like Wisconsin this year is because the quarterback. Tanner Mordecai comes up from SMU. Awesome player. They're going to open this Wisconsin Badgers offense up, I think, this year and let Mordecai sling it. Should open up a lot more holes for Allen to run through as well. And so they went out and got Mordecai. He was excellent for SMU last year. And I think he'll be excellent for the Wisconsin Badgers this year as well. They also got quarterback Nick Evers from Oklahoma. So another guy that does have experience in the spread style system from OU. Wide receiver Bryson Green comes over from Oklahoma State. What do you know? Another spread offense player. Offensive lineman Joe Huber comes in from Cincinnati. And defensive lineman Darian Varner from Temple. Should help that pass rush that lost Nick Herbig there to the NFL. But yes, I believe so much in the Wisconsin Badgers that I have them finishing 11-1. Probably should have put them above Michigan there because they are going to face Penn State in the Big Ten championship, which I think will be a monstrous matchup. Excellent defenses on both sides. Excellent offenses as well. But this is how it shakes out for the Badgers. Win at home against Buffalo. They win at Washington State. I was close to giving them a loss because that's a long trip for one, and Washington State should have a solid offense once again. As Cameron Ward returned for them this year and did not declare for the draft. So they should have a really great offense for a second straight year with Ward under center. But that could be a loss. It doesn't really matter because Iowa I have going 9-3. So, and Wisconsin would get in anyways based off conference record. But they win week 3 at home against Georgia Southern. They win at Purdue on a Friday night. Week 5 bye. They win at home against Rutgers. They win at home against Iowa. They win at Illinois. They win at home against Ohio State. They win at Indiana. They win at home against Northwestern. They win at home against Nebraska. And they're going into the last week of the regular season 11-0. And what do you know? The Oak and Barrel game. I believe that's the Oak and Barrel. Could be wrong. I probably am. But it's Paul Bunny and Zach's. Okay. Anyways. Paul Bunny and Zach's game. Yeah. They go into that one 11-0, but it's at Minnesota. They lose it for another year. So, yeah, that's the one loss. Not feeling great going into the Big Ten championship. That's how Penn State gets them, I guess. But regardless, a great season for Wisconsin, resurgency for the Badgers in Luke Fickell's first season. I think it could be something special there in Madison this year. Maybe I'll even get over and catch a game. Who knows? Heading to Mel Tucker and the Michigan State Spartans here. Not going to be good this year for Michigan State. And I really liked what they highlighted in the Big Ten East division preview on ESPN today. Mel Tucker, they had a 10-win season, 10 or 11-win season in 2019. And then, or 2020, whatever it was, 2021. And then they come back, and the last couple of seasons have not even been close. So I understand what they're saying. Like, they gave him a 10-year, $95 million contract because of one season. And yeah, it hasn't worked out so far. And I don't see it working out again this season for the Spartans because of all the losses that they had, major ones in my mind. But returning guys for them, offensive lineman J.D. Duplain, honorable mention. Center Nick Samick, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Simeon Barrow Jr., honorable mention. And their biggest returnee, linebacker Cal Halliday, second teamer. Love Cal Halliday. Excellent linebacker. We'll have to see. It's pretty early. No games have been played yet. He might be my Big Ten linebacker that I like this year. It's kind of been on the Iowa side lately, with I like Josie Jewell a couple years ago, and then Jack Campbell was excellent this past season, but it was really more DeMarvion Overshone from Texas that I really liked. Anyways, I usually like one Big Ten linebacker every season, so we'll see if Cal Halliday ends up being the guy or not. But the losses for Sparty were I think are going to be too much to overcome. Quarterback Peyton Thorne transferred. So that's the biggest issue. They didn't get a quarterback in the transfer portal. So that's the worst issue that you can have. Then their number one running back, Elijah Collins, transfers. Number one wide receiver, Keon Coleman, transfers. He was a third-team all-conference last year. Wide receiver, Jaden Reed to the NFL, honorable mention, and a third-teamer as a return specialist. Defensive lineman, Jacob Slade to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive back, Xavier Henderson to the NFL, honorable mention. Kicker Jack Stone transferred. and punter Bryce Baringer to the NFL punter of the year and a second-team all-conference, which I thought was very intriguing. That Baringer was the punter of the year, but yet Torrey Taylor was the first-team all-conference at punter. Tell me how that works. I don't know. But anyways, that's how it went down. 2 transfers that they did get, though, on offense, running back Jaron Mangum from USF, pretty solid player, and then tight end Tyneel Hopper from Boise State. Should help whoever is under center for Sparty. Noah Kim is the favorite to take over for the transferred Peyton Thorne there. So I have Michigan State going 4-8, 2-7 conference record. Week 1, they win at home against Central Michigan on a Friday night. They win at home against Richmond. They lose at home against Washington. Michael Penix and Co. It's going to be too much there. They lose at home against Maryland. They lose at Iowa. Week 6 bye. They win at Rutgers. They lose at home against Michigan. They lose at Minnesota. They lose at home against Nebraska. They lose at Ohio State. They win at Indiana. And they lose at home against Penn State on a Friday night, Black Friday there. So, yeah, it's a tough season in East Lansing. Once again, no bowl berth for me. We'll see if Mel can get it righted there. Let's go to the Fighting Matt Rules here and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. First season for Rule there. I'm excited to see what they got, especially with the transfers that they received. But just 2 all-conference guys returning, 1 offense, 1 defense. Running back Anthony Grant returns honorable mention, and linebacker Luke Reimer was an honorable mention player as well. Losses, quarterback Casey Thompson transferred, as did running back A.J. Allen. Wide receiver Trey Palmer to the NFL, second team. Wide receiver Dakotas Crawford transferred. Offensive lineman Brant Banks transferred. And defensive lineman Garrett Nelson to the NFL, second teamer. Key transfers here, they got a bunch. Quarterback Jeff Sims comes in from Georgia Tech. Wide receiver Billy Kemp from Virginia. Wide receiver Josh Fleeks from Baylor. Tight end Eric Gilbert. Offensive lineman Jacob Hood and defensive lineman MJ Sherman all coming in from Georgia. I think Gilbert's going to give them a good option on offense there for Jeff Sims to work with. So I like Nebraska as sort of a sneaky team. And that's why I have them 6-6, 4-5 conference record. They finished right in the middle there, 8th place. They lose at Minnesota on a Thursday night, week 1. They lose at Colorado, week 2. I think the Dion's going to get them rocking there in Boulder. So don't think they're going to win at Colorado. That's an old Big 12 matchup there, Nebraska, Colorado. They win at home against NIU. They win at home against Louisiana Tech. They lose at home against Michigan. They win at Illinois on a Friday night. Week 7 bye. They win at home against Northwestern. They win at home against Purdue. They win at Michigan State. And then 3 straight losses to close it out, losing at home against Maryland, lose at Wisconsin, and lose at home against Iowa on a Friday night. I believe that's also Black Friday there. So, yeah, 6-6, not a bad season for Nebraska in Rule's first year. I think that'd be a good one to build off of, and if they get a bowl win there, 7-6 is a great season in year 1. Would be a lot better than he was at Baylor and Temple his first couple of seasons. It was really the 3rd season that he got those 2 programs turned around, but I see it kind of getting turned around real quick. 6-6 in year 1 for Coach Rule. Heading on to the Hoosiers, Indiana here. Returning for them, running back Jalen Lucas was the return specialist of the year and a first-teamer at return specialist. Linebacker Aaron Casey was an honorable mention. Punter James Evans was an honorable mention. Losses, quarterback Jack Tuttle and Connor Bazelak both transferred. Defensive lineman Richard Thomas transferred. Linebacker Cam Jones to the NFL, honorable mention. Linebacker Desan McCullough transferred, honorable mention. Defensive back Tywan Mullen to the NFL, honorable mention. And kicker Charles Campbell transferred, honorable mention player there. Key transfers here, they got a bunch, and I like a couple of them here. Running back Christian Turner from Wake Forest, wide receiver E.J. Williams from Clemson. I think both should have prevalent roles on this offense, and especially Christian Turner there should have a good season for the Hoosiers. They also got offensive lineman Noah Boltikoff from TCU, defensive lineman Andre Carter from Western Michigan, and defensive lineman Philip Bleedy from Texas Tech, and defensive back Kobe Minor from Texas Tech as well. Not good for the Hoosiers this year, and that's why I haven't finished second to last. 1-8 in conference play, 2-10 overall. They lose at home against Ohio State. They win at home against Indiana State on a Friday night. They lose at home against Louisville. They win at home against Akron. They lose at Maryland. Week 6 bye. They lose at Michigan. They win at home against Rutgers. They lose at Penn State. They lose at home against Wisconsin. They lose at Illinois. And they lose at home against Michigan State and at Purdue. Actually, it's 3-9, I should say. I counted the wins and losses wrong when I initially calculated. Still 1-8 in conference play, but 3-9 overall. One game better for the Hoosiers. Make you feel a little bit better, right, Indiana fans? Sorry, Tom Allen. It's not going to be a good year for you. Let's move over to New Jersey here. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights, key returning players for them. Quarterback Gavin Wimsatt, running back Aaron Young, tight end Johnny Langan. I was surprised he wasn't even an honorable mention player at tight end. He's an excellent player for them. Defensive lineman Aaron Lewis, honorable mention. Linebacker Deion Jennings, honorable mention. And defensive back Max Melton, honorable mention as well. Losses, wide receiver Aaron Cruikshank was an NFL to the NFL, honorable mention return specialist. Defensive back Avery Young and Christian Braswell and Christian Isian, all to the NFL, honorable mention players. And punter Adam Korsak to the CFL, third team all conference. Just one key transfer. It was not a great transfer class for Greg Schiano and co. Just 8 total coming in. But one I want to highlight, wide receiver Jaquay Jackson coming in from Cal University of Pennsylvania, California University of Pennsylvania, D2 school there. He's really the only one I saw on the list of transfers that was worth mentioning. Rutgers, it's not terrible. 4-8, 2-7 conference record. They win at home against Northwestern on a Sunday, the week before the NFL season kicks off there. So Sunday college football there. Win at home against Temple. That one's a close game, but it's in New Jersey, so that's why I have Rutgers winning that one. They lose at home against Virginia Tech again. I think Brent Pry can get them. They lose at Michigan. They win at home against Wagner. They lose at Wisconsin. They win at home against Michigan State. They lose at Indiana. They week 9 bye. They lose at home against Ohio State, at Iowa, at Penn State, and at home against Maryland to end the year. 4-8, ending on a 5-game losing streak there after starting 3-4. But yeah, again, it's not what you want to see if you're Greg Schiano, but he's the one that only brought in 8 transfers to try to build the culture and to. But I have it ending in a 4-8 2023 season for the Scarlet Knights there. And the final team here, the team that finished last season, and the team that I have finishing dead last this year as well, Northwestern. It's just there's too much to overcome right now. With Pat Fitzgerald gone, interim head coach for the entire season now. There have been decommitments already from their 2024 class, so it's the sky is falling at Northwestern right now, and it's not going to be pretty on the field either. Returning quarterback Ryan Helinski, running back Cam Porter, linebacker Bruce Gallagher was a third teamer, and linebacker Xander Mueller. Losses a lot of production. Running back Evan Hall to the NFL, honorable mention. Wide receiver Malik Washington transferred. Offensive lineman Peter Skoronsky to the NFL, first team. Defensive lineman Adetamiwa Adebawore to the NFL, third team. Defensive back Cameron Mitchell to the NFL, honorable mention. And defensive back A.J. Hampton transferred as well. Two really solid transfers, though, that the Wildcats did get. Quarterback Ben Bryant comes over from Cincinnati, and wide receiver A.J. Henning comes in from Michigan. So that should give them a boost on offense. I just don't think they're going to have enough on offense the rest of the year, most of the year, to get it done and have a solid record. 2-10, just like Indiana, but I have Indiana going 3-9, I should say. But yeah, 2-10, 0-9 in conference play. I don't see them winning a single conference game this year, especially with the conference record that they have, or the conference schedule that they have. They lose at Rutgers on a Sunday, week 1. Week 2, they win at home against UTEP. They lose at Duke. It's my guy, Riley Leonard there. They lose at home against Minnesota, lose at home against Penn State. They win at home against Howard. Week 7 bye. They lose at Nebraska. They lose at home against Maryland. They lose at home against Iowa. They lose at Wisconsin, at home against Purdue, and at Illinois, losing all of those. So, yeah, not very pretty in Chicago for the Wildcats, but, you know, they've got to figure it out, and there's games to be played. So we'll see. But I have them 2-10, bottom of the basement, in the basement of the Big Ten this season. So just to recap here, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions as your 2023 Big Ten champs, beating Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. But Penn State 11-1, 8-1 conference. Wisconsin 11-1, 8-1 as well. Michigan 11-1, 8-1 also. But losing to Penn State is why Penn State wins the Big Ten East. Ohio State 9-3, 7-2 conference. Iowa 9-3, 6-3 conference. Maryland 8-4, 5-4 in conference. Minnesota and Nebraska both 6-6, both 4-5 in conference. Purdue 5-7, 4-5 in conference. Illinois, Michigan State, and Rutgers all 4-8, 2-7 in conference play. Indiana 3-9, 1-8 in conference, and then Northwestern 2-10, 0-9 in conference play. So that is the show for today, y'all. Thank y'all for watching. Next Friday, I'll be back in Wisconsin, but we'll talk FBS Independence season preview there. Notre Dame, the biggest one of those. UConn as well, and a couple others. But we'll talk Conference USA on Tuesday, and then we'll do the FBS Independence next Friday. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media at FAA Podcast on Instagram and Twitter, FAA_bets on Twitter as well. FAApodcast.com is our website. You can check us out here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Thank y'all, and we'll see you back on Tuesday.